Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. It's the Silksong talk. Since we're now days away, last week I reacted to everything I could see in the new trailer, but like myself, you might have been long out of the loop with Silksong for obvious reasons. Today then, we're going to look back at a few of the new key systems and get into the real details of what's actually going on here, so let's get started. First up, the whole concept of the new power system. If you've not looked at any Silksong stuff, like say the 2019 reveal, it's been that long, it's easy to look at the current trailer and see a lot of new concepts but not know the details. Like the new power system, which seems to be separate from some offensive abilities and your simple ability to heal, but they're still linked. In Hollow Knight, they were completely linked though. If you dealt damage, you generate resources to spend on heals, or you could spend it on skills and spells. In Silksong, we see a new system, this spool with this thread that's wrapping around it, referred to as the silk gauge. As you can see, we build up silk through combat and spend it on different abilities, like the awesome throw the needle and pull yourself to it move, which works on enemies and also objects for platforming. We also see Hornet use this energy to heal, but in a more aggressive way, where you're using the silk to cover yourself, binding the wounds. This consumes a lot of silk to heal, but heals in a bigger burst than we're used to in, say, Hollow Knight. It'll let you know how much a heal is going to cost by lighting up the lines of silk on the gauge, which is certainly good to know. So your offensive skills and abilities and healing are not separate resources after all. But the way that this works is a bit different per ability it seems. As Hornet progresses through this area, she throws the needle multiple times, at rings but also enemies. Each time she spends some of that silk, but that wheel at the top left of the health, that also changes. It actually empties along with one silk line on the spool, recovering the moment you connect physically with a target, dealing damage as an attack. But if we look at the same concept used for platforming only, where she targets this ring instead, and no damage is dealt, yeah, one silk thread is consumed, but the wheel remains lit up, and she does not recover anything on contact. So at very least it's cheaper, and there are some differences in skill use for non-combat versus combat. Either way, the power system is still linked to healing, just in some new ways. Also, it's clear that we're going to be able to overcharge these systems, more than likely in the later game, simply increasing the amount of silk you can hold on the gauge. And in this later clip against Lace, we see how the healing energy is building up a second level around the first one. So your capacity for these power systems will grow, just like original Hollow Knight. Another major change then will be the Crest System, which is basically Hornet's take on the charm system combined with tools. The Crest System lets you equip various tools in a color-coded system on a crest. Offensive tools in red slots, where the more utility-based tools and passives are found in the blue and yellow slots. So red examples would be the throwing knives or bombs, but blue and yellow, the more passive benefits, change things like your silk usage or change the function of items and traps. So the different crests provide different layouts of these slots and other potential. A starting crest was shown to have just 3 slots though, one of each colour, but another was shown to have 6 as an obvious bigger improvement. The thing is, this concept goes further than it might sound. It seems to change Hornet's attacks and abilities depending on the crest that's currently equipped. While the tools are essentially just consumables that you spend, different attack options come up when using different crests. So it can really change your playstyle. Here's a few examples of crests we've seen. The starting Wanderer's Crest is the one that has the 3 different colours and doesn't seem to have any special attack changes, just sort of the beginner one. Other examples would be the Harp Crest, which appears to be a defensive crest because what it does is reduce the cost of healing, but it also seems to change your basics a little since they are visually a bit different. I could easily imagine this is the first crest you find after starting the game. Another one we've seen is a more mechanical cog style of crest. It's not yet clear on this one, but it's likely involving tools and maybe improving their effectiveness. But one we've definitely had a good look at is the Reaper Crest, a 6-slot crest that has maybe a new attack as it shows the skill or ability in the middle. Unlocking the Reaper's Crest seems to be from a major story event, which would explain why it's so good. So overall, we have a lot to learn about this system and the true details of it. Like if you could upgrade current crests and change what's possible. But obviously we do have that skill in the middle of the Reaper's Crest, so it's likely the crests that provide a new skill attack, which might have a different resource system. We see in the new trailer, just before a minute passes, that Hornet uses this spin attack that didn't actually cost silk, and instead generated it, like a basic attack would. So it could be the crest that was equipped in that example gave her that skill. Let's look at the trader and the reveals from that with that context in mind. We can see that some of these trades require different resources, but most of them cost the main currency, the red rosaries, replacing the main currency of Hollow Knight, but seemingly working the same. We got to see 3 options in this trade though. Firstly, the Sting Shard, which appears to be a red slot offensive tool by the symbol. We'll talk about that one in a moment. There's also the magma bell, which states that it wards against lava and heat around these docks. And we've seen in the 2019 gameplay that there's these lava or heat sections where the player could walk across them, so you have to assume that maybe they had the magma bell equipped at that time. There's also a blue slot by the symbol, so a passive for that purpose. Lastly, there was also the crafting kit. With this kit, you can craft sharper and deadlier tools, which is interesting because it didn't seem to have a slot or colour. That definitely feels like a really high impact purchase then, if that's just all it is, stronger offensive tools from the moment you have it. But there must be some sort of limit to it that we didn't see there. Now in regards to tools, it's important to know that offensive tools are showing on the UI. Depending on your crest, we have different, options, and we see that crest UI overlap the needle and health bar, but also to the right, the variety of tools currently equipped. Those icons have a red circle around them, which seems to empty as you use them, as you basically consume the resources that you have for that. The simplest example of that would be the throwing knives. So that red circle is slowly emptying per knife throw. How do you actually restore your tools? Well, we're seeing the shell shards, which you use to craft tools. Back in the 2019 demo, we saw this was capped at 400. So as you kill enemies and collect some, you can restore your use. We can also see that multiple tools can be equipped and they will show up on the UI. It was explained that you just press R or whatever keybind it actually will be to use a tool. But if you have multiple equipped, it changes the keybinds slightly, where you need to press R and then a direction at the same moment, like R and up or R and down, like, using specific Hollow Knight spells and powers as a familiar system. Other tool examples we've seen then would be things like Tri-Pin, which is basically just a triple knife throw, which seems great. Or there's this ridiculous rolling wheel that does multiple instances of damage as long as it connects with them over and over. There's the Sting Shard, which hangs in the air, exploding with stabbing spikes when an enemy goes near, which is actually an attack she used against us in the fight against her back in Hollow Knight. We've also seen clips of Hornet using this to bounce a bit higher too, as a movement option. Finally, there's the Pin Pillow, which are basically just grenades you throw that explode on contact or just after a delay. You have to be careful with that one, because apparently they can hurt you too. The last topic I want to mention for this video is skills. For direct combat, we have skills that, we touched on with the Crest System. This could be the unique skill that you have in the center of a crest, at least based on what we saw with the Reaper's Crest. But it's interesting. Some skills don't seem to require Silk to use, while others do. And that reminds me of the skills versus spells system in Hollow Knight, where, spells would cost resource, but some skills just wouldn't. It'd be like a charge up and spend. Just like the tools then, the equipped skill seems to appear below the health bar in that icon list where the tools also are. That one will be a white circle that fills up with a unique icon. And if the skill is available, it seems to be glowing, tied to the silk consumption needed for it to be used. We've seen the Storm, which is basically this big silk explosion AoE around yourself. We've seen the Silk Spear, which is basically just a single powerful thrust. We've seen this Dash, which uses some silk, but means you can sideways dodge in the air and deal damage at the same time. And of course, we've seen that new Needle Throw, which you can throw at targets and enemies at the same time and pull yourself to it, dealing damage on contact if it was an enemy. Other things we have seen though are like charged slashes, familiar from Hollow Knight, or the powerful downward or upward strikes, some of which pull you with them, generating momentum. Or yet the corkscrew spin in the new trailer that also generated silk and didn't cost anything to use. So the skill system seems quite varied, and the rules of each skill might just depend on the skill. But yeah, that's a lot to really dive into. The details of some of the systems shown in the recent trailer, just expanded on based on the history of what they've shown us and told us before. But I'm sure there's still a lot we don't know, and all we can really do is go off what they said a long time ago. They're keeping things very close to their chest though. We're going to learn all about it as the game releases. Until then, I hope this was interesting and useful. I've been Hollow, you've been you. See you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.